Welcome, everybody, to the fourth episode of the Stray Pixels podcast, not currently sponsored by a VPN service, so I guess my internet service provider gets to keep knowing my darkest fanfiction secrets for now. My name is Colin, and I'm your host as usual, and I am joined by my fellow staff writer, Nathan Mejia.
Hello.
And Noisy Pixels editor-in-chief, Bailey Siemengal.
Hello.
So, how are you guys doing this week?
Better. I have managed to more or less overcome COVID.
What? I got my booster today.
Yeah.
Let's go. We're thriving. We're thriving.
We are thriving. I think I need to wait another week or so for my booster now, but
it's 2 shots. I forgot.
I just walked right into the Walgreens and I was like, "Hey, do you guys have any?" And they were like, "Yeah."
It's different if you're showing symptoms and then you had it because it needs something to work out of your system.
Because you only have to get one shot of the booster, but you have to have been non-symptomatic for a certain amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway,
okay.
Bailey, how have you been doing this week?
Pretty well, man. Pretty well. A lot of articles, a lot of drama. Same old.
Fun stuff. I've been blitzing through trails as fast as I possibly can now that I've finally got back in the groove for it, and yelling about it to everyone that I know. So all my friends love me right now.
Hey, your favorite series?
Yeah, man.
So this week's topic, inspired by the recent news that Rocksteady's game Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League has been delayed, is something that we've been seeing quite a lot of over the last couple of years, especially since the pandemic started, and that is video game delays. So these have always been a part of the industry, and for a long time it was almost a dirty word because a lot of developers just were not willing to do it, or the publishers weren't willing to let them do it, even if it would have made a better product. But ever since the pandemic started, it's been kind of an inevitability because work from home is just less efficient, and there's not really a way around that than working in the office, and that's not possible when you're under lockdown. So this is just kind of one out of a whole bunch of relatively recent announcements that we've seen. The other one that is about to finally be up is Horizon Forbidden West. Comes out very shortly. Also Elden Ring was supposed to come out last year, and Ghostwire was supposed to come out last year.
Yeah.
And that's all coming out within the next month or so. So do you guys have any thoughts on hopefully we're seeing the end of this sort of pattern, but what were you guys' thoughts like watching it all happen, getting the delayed news almost every week?
Okay, you go first. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Because I think I have a kind of short and sweet thing for this, but in that I think it kind of shows how unrealistic some of the publishers or CEOs demands are with these time frames, especially knowing that work from home, just that transition alone is going to take forever and a half, and then actually keeping the work up and keeping yourself motivated to work while at home is a really hard thing to do. And I think these delays are rather not symptoms of a deeper problem rather than the problem themselves.
Yeah.
Bailey, did you have something to add?
I think in a similar vein to what Nate said, I think it's best to see this type of stuff normalized because I don't want to say the pandemic is being used as being used to better justify these delays in the first place, but I think it's helping bring light to the fact that a lot of these bigger games especially definitely need more time in the oven. And I think with the whole working from home happening now, there's really no justification for there not being delays now, So I think it's always I think it always sucks to see reception because usually if there's 1 or 2 delays, people don't really care that much, but if it goes beyond that, it typically causes somewhat justifiable anger. But I think as we go on here, I think people will start to grow numb to it.
I think that we saw about a month and a half ago, or I guess a little more than that now. We saw it kind of come to a bit of a head when, for any of you that, I'm not going to dwell too long on it, but for any of you that may have been watching the live letter from the producer from November of last year for Final Fantasy XIV, Naoki Yoshida cried on stream, like very visibly, over the fact that he was delaying the game by 2 weeks. That was pretty heartbreaking, and it kind of like makes you wonder how much this like we don't see, especially when it comes to people that take that much pride in their work. But you know, a rushed game is bad forever. A delayed game is eventually good. Asterisk.
Asterisk. Yeah.
We'll get to it. Yeah. But this kind of comes after we've been seeing news for delays that are still coming. Obviously, Suicide Squad was delayed. We saw Final Fantasy 16 get basically internally delayed, and then they announced it publicly for whatever reason. I don't think any of us were really expecting it until at least the end of this year, but they publicly announced like, hey, this game is like 8 months behind where we thought it was going to be. And then you've got stuff like Lego Star Wars Skywalker Saga getting delayed. I don't know if anybody was really expecting that, because we're so used to these games getting cranked out and out and out, but it got indefinitely delayed. And then you have stuff that's been delayed so long that we have no idea what it even is anymore, like Digimon Survive. Digimon Survive was supposed to come out in 2021, you guys. Yeah. In 2020. No, it was supposed to come out in 2020. We still haven't seen any more of it.
We got that one game.
What if they just like change the genre or something?
Like that's the only thing I can think of for that delay is they like by the time the end of 2020 rolled around, they were like, yeah, we're so far behind that we don't even know what this game is actually supposed to be.
They make it like a freaking like Muso or something.
No, maybe I would
buy that.
Of Digimon.
So shortly into the beginning of the pandemic, which feels like decades ago, it was 2 years ago, but it feels like so much longer. We got probably the most infamous delay of the last generation, and that was Cyberpunk 2077. And they delayed that game, what, 3 times? I want to say.
I think it was like 4 or 5.
Yeah, it might have been, yeah.
Yeah, it was quite a few delays. In fact, I think they had announced that they went gold and then a delay.
Yeah, that was the last one.
That's the only time I've seen it happen, actually, where it goes like a delay after being gold. Like, oh shit, that's not good.
And Cyberpunk, obviously, plenty has been said about it, but it's a really fascinating story, because I remember when they first announced that release date, we started seeing news like, hey, there's rumors from CDPR, like they didn't know that the game was coming out this soon to begin with. And we were all like, oh no. And then it got delayed, and then it got delayed like wasn't the first one like 6 months? It was like from like spring to autumn.
You can find that out.
And we all just kind of like collectively looked at it and we were like, what's happening? Like, is this game coming out? And this was before we had it in our hands to see the final product, but it's kind of interesting that like that kind of started the domino chain to where we're at now, where we've got, just to rattle off even more.
Okay.
Did you get it, Bailey?
GameSpot has a very helpful article here. They have like a very like general timeline. So the game was announced. I had no idea that it was announced in 2012.
Oh, it was announced it was announced before Witcher 3.
What?
Yep.
What?
Yeah. Because Witcher 3 was going to come out soonish or something like that. No,
Witcher 3 didn't come out till 2015.
2015?
Okay. Wow, I didn't know.
I want to say
before that. So the first teaser was in 2013 January. Release date, the first one was April 16th, 2020.
Yep.
Then got delayed to September 17th of
and
the
it got
same
delayed
year.
like pretty close to release too.
Yeah.
Then delayed again to November 19th of the same year. Then it went gold in early October 2020. And then it got delayed again to December 10th, 2020.
Yep.
And that's when it came out, right? It was in December.
Yes, that was when it came out. And it was kind of funny because I remember at the time, given the original release windows, Cyberpunk 2077, Persona 5 Royal, and Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 1 were all supposed to come out within like 3 weeks of each other. And then Persona 5 Royal was the only one that didn't get pushed. Final Fantasy VII Remake also got pushed into summer.
Persona 1.
Persona 2. It crossed the finish line first, I guess. But even right now, like we're still in the God of War Ragnarok was supposed to come out last year. That got pushed too. And I think I don't know how many people were expecting it last year, honestly, because it seems kind of weird that they put out Horizon and God of War in the same year.
Considering that we saw nothing from Ragnarok, like
except for the announcement. And then you have one of the current stories of infamy, which is Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2, which got delayed because they're changing developers. They scrapped everything and they're changing developer. This game is cursed. This game is and has always been cursed. This is why it took this long for them to try to make it. This is the game that put the original game was the game that put Troika Games out of business.
Oh wow.
Really?
Okay.
It literally shut down the people that made it. So that's unfortunate.
That's Monka.
Are either of you guys waiting on any currently delayed, besides Digimon Survive? I believe that's a popular I'm gonna go with joke around the Noisy Pixel circle, but anything else besides that you've been like
hey man, it's not a joke for? Digimon will survive and I'll be that last hero.
I don't know if it's gonna survive anymore.
Yeah, I think we're all terrified that it's gonna come out and be bad at this point.
Honestly,
that they're just gonna fart it out because it's like they've been waiting for too long, and we have to put something out because I would imagine that it was supposed to be out a long time ago, and then Cyber Sleuth 2 was supposed to have, or whatever the next Digimon story game is, was supposed to have come out by now as well, and we don't know anything about that.
Yeah. I know the most anticipated game that I had for quite a while that was delayed.
Oh boy.
For quite a while, but just recently came out, was Dying Light 2.
Oh sure.
Really? Dying Light 2, huh?
Dying Light 2 is one of those games that like I think I like kept confusing it for other games. So every time I heard about it getting delayed, I'd be like, wait, I thought that came out like 4 months ago. Every single time. My mind did not retain any information about Dying Light 2.
Which is funny because Dying Light 2 was my most anticipated game for quite a while, and I was just kind of like, I'd forget about it, come back to it, like, oh my god, I can't wait for this to happen. Especially like you'd get like these little trailers during every other E3, I feel like, of like Dying Light 2 still exists, like yes, come on, give it to me. So it was kind of a weird dream like existence to have actually reviewed it, which is on the site, on the YouTube channel, if you want to go read it. Probably my best review.
A plug.
Make it go to the moon,
right?
Bailey, how about you?
So as of now, like I have the most like atypical answer, which is FF16, Final Fantasy 16. So like we talked about this in like I think the last episode, how the last Final Fantasy game I've like really loved was 10, and 16 is going back to a sort of setting that I really love, which is like 9-ish medieval sort of
like
times.
like even before 9, like real classic, like Game of Thronesy fantasy is what everybody was comparing it to.
Like,
I just sorry, go ahead.
I don't know, because like to me, like Final Fantasy has like kind of tried a little too hard to like deviate and like evolve compared to like Dragon Quest, which I think is the opposite, where it's like stayed very traditional.
Final Fantasy has become more anime as time has gone on. That's basically what it is. That's basically what it is.
Yeah. So and seeing the combat of 16.2 is really exciting. So I'm really excited. So like I'm like really thrilled to see where that goes. It looks like pseudo Devil May Cry. Sure.
It kind of reminded me of Lost Soul Aside. The teasers that we've gotten for that, which is also, we have no idea when that's coming out. And I just remembered another one that both Bailey and I are currently waiting out, and that is the conclusion to Kingdom Hearts Dark Road, which was supposed to be out
I should have said
last
Dark
fall.
Road. I should have said Dark Road. God damn it.
Last fall. And that is
God
after the secret delay for the finale of the base game for the English speaking audience, where it like shadow dropped 2 full weeks after it came out in Japan.
So stupid.
And I just remembered that our Reader's Choice for Game of the Year last year was delayed. Tales of Arise was supposed to come out in 2020, and it came out 2021.
Wow, yeah, that's a pretty big one.
Yeah.
So that's kind of amusing. Like the nice thing about most of these projects is that we have seen them eventually succeed, and it's clear that like the delays were necessary. Like, to go back to Endwalker for a second, like the Final Fantasy XIV's development as a whole was set back pretty significantly. Usually we would have seen an expansion in like the late summertime, at the latest, but it came out all the way in December. And even after the 2-week delay, and clearly it was worth it. Like, I gave it a perfect score. It made me cry like 5 separate times in the last 2 hours of it. But it's hard to wait out stuff like that, especially when it's a live service game, where at that point the players, especially for this game, were just waiting with no additional content updates.
Final Fantasy XIV was definitely a unique experience because, like you said, any delay in that process sets back everything by months, depending on what's been working on. There's a couple of live letters where Yoshi P, as most of the fans call him, it has definitely kind of shared some insight of, hey, I can't do this because then you won't get this, and this till later. And it's really interesting that this is as deep into the development processes that we've ever been as with Final Fantasy XIV.
Oh yeah, they're really transparent about it.
Yeah, which is really kind of refreshing because you know exactly what the problems are. Even when the servers were overfilled, they said it was our fault. Our servers overfilled.
And it's kind of neat because like you have to figure that we get a lot of delays that we don't find out about, like a lot of very internal secret, like we announced this game at E3 3 years ago and we thought that it was going to be out 2 years later, but it turns out no. And so I kind of suspected towards the beginning of the pandemic, I was like, we're about to hear about so many of these, but there is going to be a lot that we just don't find out about because, like, lucky for these people, they hadn't announced a release date in 2020. But it's kind of funny to see like just how open the industry has been to it recently, to the point where almost every major game release that I can think of recently has been delayed past where we would have thought that it would be. And most of them have come out on the other end pretty okay. But there's also like ones that I can only speculate about. Like during the time around the Falcom 40th anniversary stream, I remember a whole bunch of people were like, wait, we're not getting even the first Crossbell game until like a year and a half from now. And that means we're not getting Reverie until like 3 whole years after it came out. And that's just going to keep going. Like unless NISA like starts really fast tracking the next couple games in the series so that they come out in 2024. Like you have to wonder, like, would that like whole would Reverie have come out sooner if not for them announcing Crossbell?
Yeah, it's a really bizarre situation with Trails because so this year we're supposed to get Zero in the fall, right? But next year we're supposed to get Azure, Nayuta, and Reverie, which I don't think is like gonna happen. Like
no, I don't know, because so like with Azure and Zero are almost done. We can look at it that way. Like really all NISA has to do is like insert the edited, which they're going to go over the GeoFront script again. But they insert it into the already existing PS4 port, and most of the work has already been done. It's basically just fixing the stuff that they need to iron out.
I could see like Zero coming out like October,
Sure.
November-ish, and then Azure like the winter, like afterwards.
That's what I'm thinking. And then Nayuta is nothing. It's nothing. You can get that done in a weekend.
No one's gonna buy Nayuta, man. No one's gonna play that game.
And then Reverie. I mean, you just finished Reverie.
I had to play it. That game is significantly shorter than the average Trails game.
Well, average. I would say it from what I've seen, it's shorter than Cold Steel 3 and 4, but Cold Steel 3 and 4 were the longest games in the series up to that point. Cold Steel 4 is much longer.
I forgot that
Sky is like as long as second chapter and third put together.
That like Sky is like 40-ish hours, right? So like I guess this isn't that. Like so like because Hajimari took me I'm sorry
Reverie
took me like 50-ish hours if you do everything. So I don't like it's gonna like it's a lot less work than Cold Steel 4, I would assume, but I guess like next year we could see like Azure in the winter, Nayuta God knows when, spring or summer, I don't know, and then Reverie in the fall maybe, I don't know. But
probably.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have much to add to Trails discussions, but it's really weird, and I don't because they bought the Geofront localization, quote unquote.
If you paid for the game, you paid for the game.
Yeah. But why they just isn't releasing this as a duology, which I think would help.
Yeah, I thought they were going to do that, like because I think that would probably be a lot smarter. Maybe I don't know if it'd be smarter, but like it would probably like maybe help with sales. I would assume.
This is like its own whole topic, honestly. Topic. But I also kind of agree that it was kind of a strange decision to put Zero and Azure separately at $50 each. But we're not going to get too much deeper into that at the moment. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
What we are going to do, though, because we're about coming up on our time, is take a quick ad break, and we will come back afterwards talking about games where the delays did not help. Because it's happened quite a few times. So we will see you guys in a second. Be right back. And welcome back, everybody. So for the first half of this episode, we talked about games whose delays largely did help their quality. And for this half, we're talking about games that have come out and were not assisted in any way by the extra time that they took to come out. We already mentioned Cyberpunk. Cyberpunk is kind of a huge story of infamy these days because, again, it was delayed 3 times. And then the state that it released in proved that it probably should have been delayed by another year. Quite frankly, that's when everybody at the studio seemed to think that it was coming out anyway. And the only real mitigating factor in the disappointment with this one is basically it should have just come out on PC and newer platforms, or just PC first, because it seemed to work okay on PC. They spent too much time trying to make it work on the PS4 and Xbox One, and that did not pan out, to the point where I think we were still getting patches for the game for months afterwards, and it's still just barely approaching acceptable on 8th gen platforms. And the 9th gen version of it, as well as the upgrade for The Witcher 3, were also delayed. They were both supposed to come out last year, but because they're still trying to fix Cyberpunk, they were both delayed into this year. Hopefully we're seeing both of them sometime in the near future. But I'm going to start with Bailey. Do you have a fun example of a game that was delayed and it was not helped?
Well, I mean, this one's pretty divisive. I don't know. So
you got a spicy take?
A very spicy take. Final Fantasy 15.
See, I should have done a spit take all over my monitor. I almost did.
Yeah, man. Ruin your monitor for this.
Oh, God.
So go for it.
So 15 is a very complicated game, I think, for a lot of people. Depending on when you first learned about it, or if you followed its development since it was announced.
The first time or the second time?
I guess the first time when it was first is 13. And first, so back when it was Versus 13, like it was something about Versus 13 is very, very unique to itself. And it could just be because I was like 12 or something when it was announced. But it had a very distinct ambiance to it, and whenever they would show like more of it, like I just I don't know, like I felt a very kind of like Kingdom Hearts like type of like excitement for it. And when they announced it that it would be transforming into 15, I didn't really feel like the hesitation that some other people did. But the closer the game got to release, and when the game was out especially, it really felt like what I saw those years ago and what I was playing just didn't really feel like the same game at all, which makes sense because it was like a different director. But the game itself, even not accounting for what it once was, it just didn't feel like it was finished to me. I think that's kind of definitive at this point because of how much like DLC they added to like help like mend the story, like the character, like the character like the
episodes.
The character
is the word you're
episodes.
fishing for.
So yeah, those like episodes, those like main story scenes they added. And it really does make me wish I played it when they made the Royal version, because that feels like the definitive final like version of the game. Because when it first like came out, it felt like there was a lot of like very obvious missing hooks that just were forgotten about, you know. And it's probably the most like disappointed I felt from like a big game release, I think. And like there's like games that were like affected like worse by like their delays, like that like came out in far like worse states, because 15 was at least like a playable game, you know, like it at least like functioned well.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's just like subjective quality wise, I just don't think it really was worth it in the end, you know.
Nate, do you have anything to say about Final Fantasy 15? Because I'm a lifelong 15 apologist. I got a lot to say.
Oh boy.
I have a lot to say as well. Particularly that I kind of wished it was a little more divorced from that original Versus 13 thing, because I think everybody had unrealistic expectations out of it from the get-go, because those beginning scenes where you're seeing Leviathan come in destroying a whole city, you know, that was a very high-end, very spectacle based affair that was made for that specific demo and then canned because story reasons. I think Novella Chrysalis, which was the big center universe around 13, and Lightning was going to be more important to it. So I think a lot of stuff just had to be scrapped just to not have any connection to 13 at all. That being said, I think the 13th chapter is still very good.
So 15's delay is somewhat infamous because this was one of the stories that was broken by Jason Schreier over when he was at Kotaku, and he like basically became famous for like between this and the No Man's Sky delay, which I believe he was also the one who broke that story. Kind of gave him a reputation that he kind of enjoys having now, because he makes jokes on Twitter like, "Don't cross me or I'll delay your game next," because people were blaming him specifically. They were saying he was lying. They were attacking him on Twitter for daring to imply that this game was delayed by 2 months. It was 2 months.
Calm down, man.
That was it.
People gotta calm down. Jesus Christ.
So we all live in fear of people treating us the same way for, you know, breaking a story. But with 15, the fact that there were things that were definitely given higher priority in the development pipeline is fairly obvious, and it's all like, it's a strange product because the first about like, I'll say 30-40%, if you include most of the open world activities in that, because that's a pretty significant chunk of time. The first huge chunk of that game feels super expansive. Like it's this huge road trip that you're going on. You're seeing all kinds of places. Like it's a relatively limited in scope, but you still feel like you're going a far way because you're seeing all kinds of different locations. And then as soon as the story takes you to Alticia, you're basically on rails for the whole rest of the game. particularly once the city gets destroyed. That is like the game basically locks you in for the whole rest of it, to the point where they had to add a feature that lets you travel back in time to the open world so that you could keep doing the side content. So that kind of shows like a little bit of directorial confusion about where he wanted to go with it. And I do kind of wonder, like, could there have been a more even distribution? Could we have seen more open areas? Or was it just kind of doomed to be the way that it was from the beginning? We'll never know, because they didn't actually get to finish even making those character episodes. Yeah. But that one was only 2 months. So
yeah, it's not that bad.
Only 2 months, and he got canceled on Twitter over it. I'm livid to this day. Nate, what do you got?
So I got a couple off the top of my head. My first joke answer is going to be the one that we'll all remember Mr. Broussard for. And that is Duke Nukem Forever.
Duke Nukem Forever.
And I think it's a perfect example of a game that, because of how many delays it had, and its development cycle being notoriously bad.
That's like a perfect one in terms of games that were secretly delayed, like internally over and over again. Very famously, that's one of Matt McMuscles' magnum opus videos, is the long and storied history of Duke Nukem Forever. But did you play it when it came out?
I didn't. I remember it being a big deal, but at that time I was kind of like over Duke Nukem.
I played a little bit of it, and I remember I think I like got it out of a used spin later, because I was too young to like have really been into Duke Nukem. But I think I picked it up out of a used spin for like $5, and I played it for like an hour, and I was like, what is this? Like, it's like traveling back in time to the 90s, but at the same time it's being smashed up against an attempt at modernization. Just go back and play Duke Nukem 3D. It's been released for everything. There's no reason to
well, and I would even say, because at least Duke Nukem 3 has the excuse of being in the 90s. I grew up with Duke Nukem, but not 3D. I grew up with the original 2D platformers. So
platformers?
They were platformers at first for old computers.
The 90s were wild, man. And
that was because I grew up in a relatively poor town, and our local youth center, not as cool as the Power Rangers youth center, but still something, would have Sega Genesis. That's how I experienced Earthworm Jim and sports games, was through the Sega Genesis. And then I had really old computers. I had Battle Chess, Duke Nukem, and one other game I don't even remember anymore. But so I was so far done, because Duke Nukem Forever, by that time, you're right, was like traveling back to the 1990s. Kind of not in a good way.
But kind of in a good way.
No, even at my horniest at age 18, being at that point a young straight cis male, I even thought was a little overboard on how much sex jokes and innuendos was in it.
You had another one you wanted to point out?
Oh boy, here we go.
Yeah. So that was the joke, haha, answer. The next one, Raph.
Is massive.
Well, okay, actually, yes, you did jog my memory. It was, of course, Mass Effect Andromeda.
Oh no, what did I do?
It didn't. Speaking of directorial incompetence, and it was all freaking BioWare's fault, honestly.
Yeah. For the quick and dirty, essentially, was that they put a B team onto this around the time they're making a big initiative called One BioWare, which was. So it was an initiative that said, hey, if you're in BioWare, Texas, I can't remember exactly in Texas, in Montreal or Toronto, we'd all just work together, pull all our resources together to help you make a game. which
cool.
sounds good until there's infighting because they think the main team is stealing people from the project, their project, and it didn't have a real directorial head at all for this. In fact, the original game was going to be all procedurally generated and just exploring worlds.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, it wasn't until Mac Walters came onto the scene that they got any sort of direction, and then Frostbite.
Oh yes, the engine.
Frostbite.
Yeah,
Frostbite. So it being made in Frostbite isn't a problem, but the problem is that all of your old tools are in Unreal. And when you said, "Hey, an experienced team, go do a new engine,"
friends. So I had this friend in school who like fucking die-hard Mass Effect fan, like super fucking like into it. He wore fucking like merch and shit. Like he was like into it, right?
Yeah.
So, it's just kind of sad, but it's kind of funny. So like every now and then I would see him and he would be like, and like if we talked about like games in some way, he would bring up Mass Effect, right? And like sometimes he would like he would wear like a shirt or like something, like he was like a super fan, right?
Yeah.
I distinctly remember when Andromeda came out. The next time I saw this guy, he looked completely different. He got like he like half his hair was gone. He got like glasses or something. Like he got like a tattoo on his like he underwent like a transformation. Like Andromeda fucked this guy up bad. So whenever I see Mass Effect, I'm like I always think of that guy.
Yeah.
And I wonder how he is now.
Do you have anything to say about Mass Effect, Colin?
Nope. Still no. Sorry. I remain gleefully unopinionated about Mass Effect, but I do have another absolute king of this topic.
Oh no.
Mighty Number 9.
Oh, that's a fantastic one. That's a good one.
Mighty Number 9 was delayed over and over and over again. Sometimes it was in secret, and then a bunch of times it was in public. And oh boy, I made it through, I want to say, about an hour and a half of Mighty Number 9 before I uninstalled it from my console and decided to never look back ever again.
You didn't plat it?
I did not plat it. I'm so sorry to your trophy hounding sensibilities. Really only plats games he hates.
Yeah, that's true. I have only one real question.
What?
Did it make you cry like an anime fan on prom night?
It didn't make me cry. It didn't make me feel. Honestly, like if a game is billing itself on, hey, this is going to be a nostalgia trip, and it doesn't, and it makes you dead on the inside, then it's failed. And honestly, that's Mighty Number 9. Like at that point, I was just like, it's boring. The biggest problem with this game is that it's boring. It's broken. It's boring. It's uninteresting. And this is an example of the company that eventually went on to publish it, which I think was Deep Silver. If I'm not,
yeah, it was Deep Silver. Yeah.
Basically just kept pulling back and pulling back and pulling back. And the game that we saw at the announcement just was not the game that we actually got. It didn't look like it, and it didn't play like it. Like they literally changed the design of the main character Beck to this really crappy, like more off-putting and much more generic design, honestly, that lost a lot of the personality that the announcement had. And I remember seeing that and I was like, oh, that's not a good sign.
Well, and that project had a lot of problems to begin with. Mostly that it was right on the coattails of Inafune, which at that point Inafune was just
he was a con
guy.
Man.
Yeah,
honestly. I think it was so all I really know about this game is like Kickstarter and like how they like gypped people, like people out of the, I think it was like the Vita copies or something.
Yes, I believe the Vita version was and then they also, like, while Mighty Number 9 was in development hell, they attempted to kickstart a second game.
Really?
Yes, it was called Red Ash.
Wasn't that the anime that they were trying to do?
Anime? Wait,
I believe it eventually took the form of an anime that was then canceled, or like, so this Kickstarter failed because nobody wanted to give Concept any more money. And they took it down fairly early, knowing that it would fail, but with an announcement that the game had secured a publisher, and then we never heard anything about it ever again.
Oh, I'm on the Kickstarter page for Red Ash, the Indelible Legend.
Yeah.
Oh my, this rate. So
the idea was Mighty Number 9 was supposed to be like Mega Man X, and then Red Ash was supposed to be like Legends, because this was also when Legends was languishing right after Legends 3 got canceled.
Yeah. Which a very interesting video came out earlier today about that.
Really?
Yeah.
Wait, no, this cannot be real. No.
What did you find? What did you find, Bailey?
Wait a second. So I'm on the Kickstarter page, right? Wait, I got to read this bullshit.
Go for it.
Wait a second.
Okay, go for it. Tell me.
Do a dramatic reading.
So on the Kickstarter page for Red Ash, right? I'm just like scrolling through. So I'm just like going through like each like tier of like payments and like what people would get, right? So like
I love these.
So there's like $49 you get like a combo with like the soundtrack, blah blah. So like pretty standard stuff, right?
Yeah.
And this cannot be real, right? So the very bottom, right? Not if you $9,999, right?
Yeah.
You see, I think this is Inafune. So like there's a picture of Inafune in like a frame, right? And like there's like food next, and so like there's like drawn food and drink next to him. Is this supposed to be like you would go out and eat and like eat with Inafune?
That there were so many of these projects that had like really high tier rewards that involved like getting to hang out with like famous developer X, and it's like, oh my god, what a fucking ego trip that is on their part. And honestly, crowdfunding games are like an excellent well of games that have development problems and then come out on the other end severely lacking in quality. Shenmue 3 is another really good one. That was delayed, and when it came out, nobody was happy. Nobody was happy.
So like what exactly is the problem with like Shenmue 3? Because I always hear about it, but I don't ever know like what
Nate,
exactly.
do you want to?
Yeah. So the main issue I have with it is that Shenmue 3 is essentially Yakuza Light. And Shenmue is always one of those games where people thought they wanted, but didn't actually really want, because we already had so many other games that does it so much better.
That was what just to cut in for a second, that was my original thought when Shenmue 3 was announced, was why like go get caught up on Yakuza. There's so many good Yakuza games. You can continue.
Yeah, no, and that was the real problem with it. The other one is like I think also the way they announced it was weird, because they didn't announce that it was coming out. They announced a Kickstarter at a PlayStation event.
At Sony's event. Sony was not publishing.
That's weird.
Yeah. It was this big old thing to announce a Kickstarter, and then they got money for it. And I think they ended up having to go through a publisher.
Deep Silver.
Yep.
It was Deep Silver again.
Back in action.
Yeah. And they, I think that money ended up just going to like pay for a portion of it. And
it became an EGS exclusive. That was another thing so they couldn't fulfill the Steam codes that had been promised in the Kickstarter.
There was a lot right on it. And then after, when it came out, it was just like kind of an okay game. Like nobody really cared anymore.
So the thing with Shenmue 3, and if y'all haven't seen it, Super Eye Patch Wolf has an absolute masterpiece of a rant about this game. So go look that up if you want to. But the basic gist of why people didn't like this game is Shenmue 2 leaves off on a cliffhanger. People have been waiting for literally decades to see this plot get resolved, and Shenmue 3 does not move the plot forward in any way. Every single character ends Shenmue 3 in exactly the same position they were in at the end of Shenmue 2. And that, combined with a reworked combat system that literally was like, yeah, just mash the buttons and you'll do something. That is the design concept behind the combat system. Is we wanted the player to be able to press any combination of buttons and make something meaningful happen. And it's a disaster. It's a stat grindy, extremely tedious disaster.
So what you're telling me, Colin, is that there's a possibility for Shenmue 4.
So that was kind of the thing with 3. Like what it ultimately comes down to is that Shenmue 3 isn't the sequel to Shenmue 2. It's a prequel to Shenmue 4. But then it sold like crap. So there is like Yu Suzuki still seems to want to make Shenmue 4, but I don't know who the hell is going to put up the money for it, because there's the market for it is smaller than it was before Shenmue 3 came out. And a lot of people just gave up on their hopes and dreams.
Just recently, it was actually free on Epic Games Store too.
Yeah. I remember, to go back for a second, Mighty No. 9 was a free PS Plus game a couple years ago. And I remember people yelling about it. People yelling about it. They were like, this? Really?
It's fun.
Yeah, man. I mean, I only have one real question about this.
What, Nate?
You know where I could find any sailors?
Oh God.
Jesus Christ.
Go watch the Super Eye Patch Wolf video. So we're looking to wrap this up pretty soon. We're approaching the end of the episode, and I want to ask you guys individually, what game delay in your lifetime, doesn't have to be recent, what delay hit you the closest to home? What was the hardest for you to deal with? And I'm going to start with Nate.
Ooh. I'm going to default back down to Bailey because I'm not 100% prepared.
I gave you this ahead of time. Okay,
we all know
Bailey,
it's gonna be Mass Effect.
Go ahead, Bailey.
All right, so I mean,
say the thing we know you're going to say.
Kingdom Hearts 3.
Why did Kingdom Hearts 3 affect you?
We all know it. Kingdom Hearts 3. So like, the thing is, it was a pretty minor delay, like it was like a month. But it sucked for me at the time because I was still a student, and if it came out when it was supposed to come out, which was in December, I would have had like a whole holiday to play through it. But then it came out at the end of January, and I was like, damn, I got to go through school and then come back and go through the whole hassle. But I don't know, like it felt, I was kind of scared because at that time when KH3 was really close to coming out, there was a lot of like manic behavior like in the fan base because like people were fucking like desperate for something.
Oh my God, it was bad. It was bad, y'all.
It was really, really bad.
Hard times out here. And I remember people yelling about it like, oh, it's delayed again. And I was just like, guys, this is the first time it's ever been delayed. People are acting like Kingdom Hearts 3 has been in development since Kingdom Hearts 2 came out. And it's like, no, they made like 7 whole games in the meantime. Did you not play those?
Well, I think that's not helped by the fact that there was these kind of like, I don't know if they were ever confirmed, but like 3DS was supposed to be the prequel to 3.
Dream Drop. So people kind of were sketch when Dream Drop Distance was announced because the title of it was technically announced as Kingdom Hearts 3D. And they changed that later because that's even more confusing than the average Kingdom Hearts title. But I remember people were like setting the internet on fire. They were like, Kingdom Hearts 3 is finally coming and it's going to be a 3DS game. And the developers had to be like, no, this isn't Kingdom Hearts 3. This is another integral game. Yeah. We're so sorry for this. And they changed the title.
So funny.
Yeah.
It's so funny.
Leading up into that, it leads to my favorite joke in the Kingdom Hearts games ever, when Sora flies towards Olympus Coliseum. And it says Kingdom Hearts 2.9.
Oh my God. They got everybody.
So this could be its whole own episode, right? Mm-hmm. But there's this really wild theory called the Sleeping Realm theory.
Oh.
Go
on.
I remember you telling this.
And it's a whole so it's like 100-something page document, right? It's so like essentially this like 2.9 part of KH3 is actually prior to when KH3 really begins, and there's a timeline divergence from where the Keyblade War happens, and this is the second timeline, right? So we don't see the first timeline of KH3, but but this is the second one, right?
Wait, wouldn't that mean that there's 3 because there's also the split at the end of the game?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
And that's why it's going to be Kingdom Hearts 3 for reals this time, because we're bringing the 3 timelines together. And what we all know is going to be Kingdom Hearts 3.5 Return to the Timelines.
Yo, because we got simultaneous world lines, man. They all gotta converge together, man.
Appearing only on the Nintendo Switch through the cloud.
I'd actually cry though.
Wait, do you have an answer yet?
I have 100% an answer.
Go for it.
The Sands of Time remake.
Ooh, we didn't even talk about that. Yeah,
we didn't talk about that, and I'm kind of kicking myself in the butt because I also kind of forgot about it because it hurt me like real bad because I was a big fan of those Sands of Times game. Less War Within kind of back in at Two Thrones, and so I remember like being like insanely like, yes, I gotta play this. And then when it got delayed to maybe it'll come out, it kind of hurt my soul in a way that the prince may not ever be able to heal.
Gotta turn back time enough.
We don't have enough Sands of Time in the world to turn back time on that, man.
I wonder how that game is doing though, because like they announced the delay and like there's been like nothing.
I can't wait till the Sands of Time NFT announcement.
Yeah, god damn it, no. Ubisoft.
Please be excited.
So my answer to this question is honestly probably Persona 5. Because Persona 5 was delayed several times internally. It came out like 3 whole years after it was announced, and I remember just seeing like announcement after announcement, like, and they would drop key art for it, and it was just like, cool, when is this coming out? And it eventually came out and it was amazing, but I remember just like sitting there and like, is there news? Is there news about Persona today? Is there news about Persona today? Yeah. I'm not even that much of a stan, but I remember that key art, the announcement art was all the chairs in the row with the balls attached to them, and there was the one with the chain broken, and that was the announcement art.
Do you want emancipation?
Exactly, engraved in my head. That was the one that hit me the hardest.
It's a good line.
It's a really good line, and that one. Didn't hit me that hard because I was only barely getting into Persona, because I got into Persona around 2011-ish, definitely like a year before Golden came out. So kind of a perfect time to come in and get all these games absorbed into me.
Absorbed.
Yeah, man, according to Monarch, I'm a glutton, man. I got to absorb all this stuff around me.
All right, and on that note, as usual, on a absolutely awkward, cringed masterpiece, we're gonna wrap this up. So thanks for listening to another episode of the Stray Pixels podcast. We post every Tuesday on your podcast app of choice or right here on the Noisy Pixel YouTube channel. Down in the comments, I want you guys to sound off what video game delay hit you the hardest in your lifetime. Doesn't have to be a recent one. I just want to know, at any point, did you ever hear about a delay and you were like, I'm literally going to go into my room and cry for 2 hours right now?
You know, Colin, I think for further immersion, we should have delayed this episode by
God damn it, you're right.
That's okay. Azara will forget about us once again.
If there's anything you guys want us to talk about on a future episode, let us know down in the comments as well, or you can talk to us on Twitter. You can find me, Colin, at the Arcane Ranger. You can find Nate at less than Nate, and you can find Bailey at Orpheus Joshua, or the site itself at Noisy Pixel News. The Stray Pixel podcast is brought to you by NoisyPixel.net. Noisy Pixel is run by a group of gamers who work hard to bring you the latest news, reviews, previews, podcasts, and more. Please like, subscribe, and follow to keep up with our future content, and we'll see you guys next time.
Yeah, Zario can't give you that one.
Feels bad, man. Bye, guys.
Deuces.